Marcus Hale stood frozen on stage, his research slides glitching, his mic cut mid-sentence just as thousands of scientists leaned in to listen. Behind the blackout, a silent conspiracy moved. Stolen data, erased credit, and one whispered warning from a TSA agent days earlier. They called ahead about you. Now, with his name trending as a fraud and his funding slashed without reason, Marcus unlocks a package left at his door. Inside, torn pages from his own lab notebook. But what he sees in red ink makes him stumble back. Someone plans to end more than his career. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. In the most prestigious lecture hall of America, a young black professor's intelligence is questioned, not for his ideas, but for the way he speaks. As he walks off the stage, heart pounding, someone records the moment on their phone and presses upload. The late October sun glistened through the arched windows of Harvard's Maxwell Auditorium. Its golden beams cut across the deep mahogany interior like spotlights on a stage, settling on the lone figure at the front of the room. Marcus Hale, 32, adjusted his navy blazer, smoothed the front of his tie, and glanced at the sea of faculty, graduate students, and visiting researchers gathered for the weekly Innovation in Biosystems lecture series. It was his first time speaking in this room. As a lead presenter, he had been invited, not by a mentor or peer, but by necessity. His research had disrupted a long-standing assumption in neurocellular conductivity, and suddenly the department that barely acknowledged him needed him to explain the math they hadn't been able to refute. But he knew they didn't want him. They wanted his data, his results, his findings, just not the man who delivered them. Still, Marcus was determined. He cleared his throat, stepped up to the podium, and began. His voice carried a soft Mississippi timbre, a gentle drawl polished by years of academia but never erased. He had tried, in his early 20s, to change it, recording himself, mimicking news anchors, correcting vowel sounds. But eventually he realized that to erase his accent was to erase too much of himself. Today he chose authenticity. But he didn't yet realize the cost. As we explore the synaptic delay variability in post-trauma networks, Marcus began, clicking through a molecular model on the projector. You'll notice the consistent statistical anomaly just beyond the initial neurotransmission spike. The room was silent. Eyes were on him. Pens scribbled. Laptops clicked. Some nodded. Some frowned. But then it came. From the third row, a hand shot up. It belonged to Dr. Hunter Sloan, a tenured neuropharmacologist, known as much for his brutal critiques as for his obsession with rigid linguistic formality. A man who once corrected a visiting lecturer's pronunciation of epigenetic mid-talk. Marcus paused, uneasy. Dr. Sloan didn't wait to be acknowledged. Dr. Hale, he interrupted, his voice cutting like ice. When you say anomaly, do you mean anomaly? Or is anomaly a new discovery from the deep south? Laughter. Loud. Quick. Ugly. Even a few in the back chuckled reflexively. Marcus froze. It wasn't just the words. It was the smug tilt of Sloane's head. The mockery laced beneath scientific curiosity. The implicit suggestion that intelligence couldn't possibly coexist with his accent. That his legitimacy was always under scrutiny. A flush of heat crawled up Marcus's neck. He looked around the room. Some looked away. Others smirked. No one defended him. He cleared his throat. Yes, he said calmly. I meant anomaly. Though I'm sure if it came out differently, it didn't interfere with the slide. More laughter. This time quieter, like a knife tucked behind politeness. Sloane raised his eyebrows, but said nothing. His point had been made. Marcus forced himself to continue. Slide after slide, chart after chart. But the damage was done. The room had shifted. The confidence he walked in with had shrunk under the weight of humiliation. Every time he opened his mouth he could feel them listening, not for insight, but for missteps. When the lecture finally ended, a few clapped, politely, mechanically. Marcus closed his laptop, hands trembling slightly. He could feel the sweat pooling behind his collar. As he packed up his notes, the conversations around him resumed, but they no longer included him. He had become invisible, except for the moment they all wished they could replay, and someone would, because 2 rows behind Dr. Sloan, a visiting postdoc had captured the moment on their phone. The mocking, the laughter, the silence that followed. And they weren't just saving it. They were about to share it. Marcus didn't see the phone raised discreetly. He didn't see the email being drafted with the subject line, "Guess what happened at Harvard today?" He didn't see the forward to a science humor page known for viral clips. He didn't see the file name Dr. Accent Fail. All he saw was the hallway ahead, long and shadowed, as he walked away from the stage, his chest tight, his eyes burning with shame, and his heart pounding with the familiar ache of being underestimated. Not because of what he knew, but because of how he said it. Behind him, the phone clicked. Upload complete. And within hours, the world would laugh with them. Or maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't. Behind ivy-covered walls, racism doesn't scream. It whispers through polite tones, fake laughs and closed doors. The red folder with his name disappears behind a closing office door marked Tenure Committee. The corridor smelled faintly of varnished wood and academic stillness, a silence broken only by the rhythmic echo of Marcus Hale's steps. He moved slowly, not from hesitation, but from the thick weight of humiliation still clinging to him like damp fabric. His body moved forward. His mind was still trapped in that lecture hall, replaying every second of what had happened, moment by moment, wound by wound. The laughter had been the worst of it. Not loud, not harsh, just enough to puncture the air and let something toxic slip in. And what stung most was the silence of the others. The people who could have said something, should have said something, but chose not to. He could still hear Sloane's voice, dripping with disdain. "Is that a new discovery from the Deep South?" Marcus clenched his jaw as he walked. The remark had been delivered like a joke, but it wasn't one. It never was. Not when the joke was always aimed upward, always meant to push someone like him back down. He reached the faculty lounge doors right on time, the lettering engraved in gold. Maxwell Collegiate Conversation Room. A name chosen to sound neutral yet exclusive. A place where ideas were shared, but people were vetted. He paused at the threshold. Voices murmured inside, low, guarded, adjusting as soon as he stepped in. The room was a blend of elegance and quiet hostility. Leather seats arranged in unspoken hierarchy. Art on the walls depicting intellectual legacy, which in this building translated to portraits of white faces painted in oil. Their eyes, serious and cold, followed whoever entered, as if guarding something. Marcus walked in anyway. His face was calm, practiced after years of learning what emotion could and could not show in rooms like this. He crossed to the far end, where a small circular table gave him distance. He placed his folder down gently, spreading out his notes, even though the meeting wasn't about his work. Not really. It rarely was. Around the coffee urn, several assistant professors stood with ceramic cups in hand, their shoulders angled inward, forming a subtle circle. Their voices dropped the moment he got close. He caught a phrase in the whisper. "Did you see it? Someone uploaded it already." A response sharper, nervous. "It's already hit the faculty subreddit, and God, Twitter." They didn't mention the mockery. They didn't mention Sloane. They didn't mention the cruelty. Just the incident. As if Marcus had created the moment, by existing. He didn't turn toward them. He didn't react. He had learned how dangerous reaction was. At the far side of the room, Dr. Elaine Kapoor entered. Her steps were purposeful. Her eyes met Marcus's, just briefly, and in them was a quiet apology the rest of the room would never offer. She approached without hesitation. She sat beside him. A gesture that seemed small, but in this space, it was an act of rebellion. She spoke softly, careful not to draw attention. "Marcus, I saw it. I'm so sorry." He didn't look up. "It was bound to happen," he replied. "Someone always has their phone out." "No," she said. I mean what he said. It was predictable. His voice was flat, but sharp beneath it. Elaine didn't argue. She knew. She had seen the way Marcus had to walk through academia. Quiet brilliance meeting loud doubt. The meeting began sharply. Dr. Walter Walton, department chair, stood with the stiff posture of a man who believed he was the gatekeeper of legacy. "Let's begin," he announced, tapping his pen once on the table. "We have agenda points on grant funding, collaboration credits, and the departmental budget." His voice conveyed the illusion of objectivity, not neutrality. That didn't exist here. Marcus took notes. His mind could still function through pain. It always had. But today, each word spoken in that room seemed stained with something: condescension, caution, or silent observation. He noticed something new. A distance. Even professors who usually greeted him with small talk avoided eye contact. Not out of malice. out of calculation. He had become a liability, a target, something socially risky to stand near. At the coffee table, Professor Ling and Dr. Fincher leaned in close. Their whispers sharpened. Should someone talk to Sloane? Ling murmured. This could reflect on the department. Fincher shook her head. We can't be seen picking sides. You know how these things become political. Just let it pass. Like weather. Like wind. Like Marcus's dignity. Was a brief inconvenience. Meanwhile, Dr. Sloane sat calmly, reading the minutes, pretending to be uninvolved. A man certain that consequences never fall upward. Marcus watched him for a moment. The man hadn't even had to defend himself. The system protected him long before the incident happened, and long after. Walton moved to the next point. We need to discuss upcoming faculty reviews. The words faded. Marcus felt it before he understood it. The shift in tone. The quiet glances exchanged. Something was happening beneath the table-level conversation. Something administrative. Something purposeful. A new body language spread through the room. Shared silence. Careful patience. Marcus's instincts sharpened. He had been studied his whole life. Today he was also being handled. Elaine must have sensed it too. Her voice dropped, barely audible. They're moving faster than expected. Marcus glanced toward her. What do you mean? She didn't speak at first. She watched two senior professors cross the lounge, talking low, heading for the inner corridor. One carried a leather folio, thick, official, colored a dark, striking red. Then she said, "That's the tenure file color." Marcus felt a chill shoot through him. But tenure evaluations aren't now. I know. Her throat tensed. Which means this isn't a scheduled review. He didn't need it spelled out. It was a review of something else. Not his publications. Not his citation. Not even his grant performance. It was a review of him. After the meeting ended, faculty rose quickly, too quickly, as if leaving a scene of contamination. Marcus stood as well, stacking his papers with controlled precision. His expression calm but his pulse heavy. He left the lounge after most had exited, but not before seeing it. Down the hall near the administrative offices, two professors stood in conversation. And in the hands of one of them, there it was, the red folder. He could see his name. Typed. Clean. No emotion. No context. Marcus A. Hale. And under it, stamped in black, Tenure Committee. Marcus slowed his steps, pretending to check his bag, pretending not to notice, pretending everything was normal. He heard one of them speak. Voice low. We'll convene Monday. It needs to be addressed before it spreads further. The other replied quietly, we have to consider the optics. Optics. A word that meant everything but said nothing. Marcus waited until they began walking away. Then followed with his eyes as they carried the folder down the hall, toward a door with frosted glass. No sign, no welcome. Just 3 words etched in brass. Faculty Tenure Committee. The door swung open. They stepped inside. The folder went with them. Then the door closed. Softly. Finally. Completely. Leaving Marcus standing in the hallway, alone, knowing something brutal and profoundly unfair had just begun. The red folder with his name disappears behind the closing office door, marked Tenure Committee. When silence falls over the lab, so does the weight of centuries of doubt, injustice, and the question, do they ever really want you to win? A strange login attempt shows up on his research server. Someone is inside his data. The campus felt different after sundown. Emptier, quieter, but not in a way that brought peace. For Marcus Hale, the silence wasn't comforting. It pressed in like a judgment, echoing louder than the laughter that still rang in his ears. His footsteps fell softly on the concrete as he made his way back to his lab. It was nearly 9:30 p.m., and the building stood mostly dark, except for a faint glow on the second floor. Their floor. His floor. The floor where his future was being built. Molecule by molecule. Line of code by line of code. Under fluorescent lights and the hum of aging Marcus swiped his badge. The door clicked. He stepped inside and locked it behind him. The lab was cold, humming with machines still mid-process. Beakers bubbled gently. Data monitors blinked softly. His research was on cellular electrical regeneration. How nerve cells, especially post-trauma, adapted under certain genetic stimulation. His findings weren't just novel. They were disruptive, uncomfortable. They challenged long-held theories, authored by men with buildings named after them. He shrugged off his coat and approached the main workstation. The screen came to life with a keystroke. The desktop was cluttered with folders, results from the past 4 weeks, simulation models, annotated journal drafts, and a nearly finished paper he had planned to submit to the American Journal of Cellular Neuroscience. Tonight, he told himself, he would focus. He would drown the noise of humiliation in numbers, in logic, in precision. But focus did not come easily. He sat and opened the latest model, a three-dimensional rendering of post-traumatic synaptic mapping. Colored lines danced across the screen like living threads. Each spike, each dip, represented lives, real people, potential futures. His work could help restore neurological function in trauma survivors, veterans, children, stroke victims. And yet here he was, fighting not just for discovery, but for permission to speak. His accent. That's what they remembered. Not the science. Not the data. Not the breakthrough. Just the way his vowels rolled out. Warmer, slower, born of southern heat and black resilience. A wave of doubt washed over him. Did any of it matter? Would the science ever be enough to outrun how they saw him? He opened his notebook, flipped through pages of notes, ink-stained ideas scribbled at 2 a.m., breakthroughs jotted while eating cold takeout on a lab stool. Pages no one saw, effort no one applauded, only the mistakes, the mispronounced word, the visible discomfort of a white audience being asked to listen to brilliance spoken in a voice they were trained not to trust. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting for input, for faith. He typed. Another paragraph. Another analysis. He pushed forward, hour after hour. Silence became a cocoon. The world shrank to the screen. The beakers, the hum of machines running background tests. The research kept moving, but something began to shift. At 11:42 p.m., as he was compiling a batch of results from a controlled protein stimulus run, he noticed something odd. A pop-up. Remote access request. Server 04. User ID unknown. He stared at the screen. It blinked once, then disappeared. At first he thought it was a glitch. It had happened before. Harvard's server systems were secure, but not invincible. Maybe a false ping, a mistyped command. But then it happened again. Login attempt detected. Unauthorized access. Project Impersonal subnetwork. That wasn't just any directory. That was his primary dataset. The one he had locked 3 months ago, after Sloane's assistant casually asked if he could browse the folder just to compare protocols. Marcus had tightened access since then. It wasn't just caution, it was survival. He sat up straight. His fingers moved fast. He accessed the server log. Scrolled down. Timestamp 11:43:07 p.m. IP. Intern. User mask. Tem. Not his. Not even its normal pattern. Someone was in the system, inside his research. He toggled the access lock. Deny external connections YM. He typed. The connection severed. The window closed. Silence returned. But the damage, if any, was already done. He sat there for a moment, staring at the monitor, heart thumping. The screen now seemed too bright, too vulnerable. His notebook lay open beside him like a confession. Who would try to access it? And why tonight? Was it random? Or was it connected? He thought of the folder. The red one. Tenure committee. The timing wasn't coincidence. Someone didn't just want to mock him. They wanted to dismantle him, discredit him, make the mockery look deserved. And if they tampered with his data, if they made it look like he fabricated results, Marcus stood and locked the lab door a second time. This time double-checking the latch. The lab, once a sanctuary, now felt exposed. He took a breath, pulled out his phone, dialed Elaine Kapoor. It rang, and rang. No answer. He left a message. Elaine, it's Marcus. I just had a security breach. Someone tried accessing my main server. I stopped it. But I think it was internal. This isn't random. I need to talk. He hung up and sat down again. Everything he had built, everything he had believed about merit and fairness, was cracking. It wasn't just the laughter in the lecture hall. It wasn't just the video. It was bigger, targeted, strategic. And someone in this building was trying to erase him, not loudly, but surgically. Outside the lab, the hallway light flickered once. Then again. Then the building went still. Marcus stared at the blank screen. He wasn't imagining it anymore. Someone was inside his data. The screen flickers back on, and the folder Project M Hale, Gen Subnetwork A, is gone. Sometimes the most powerful rejection comes hidden behind polite approval. And Marcus is about to find out how deep bias can be. The online version of his paper is missing something critical. His name. The hum of the lab was gone by morning. But the tension had only grown thicker. Marcus barely slept. The attempted server breach haunted him, looping in his mind with quiet terror. Someone had reached into the heart of his work, undetected, calculating, and then vanished. He arrived early, long before students or faculty filled the halls. His eyes were tired, but sharp. He logged back into the lab system, checking every directory, every file path. The folder GenSub Network was still missing. Gone without a trace. No corrupted data, no visible logs of deletion. Just absence. Like it had never existed. And that's what scared him most. Not the attack, but the precision. He downloaded a fresh backup, then encrypted his system twice. If someone wanted to bury him, he wouldn't go quietly. By noon he returned to his office and found the long-awaited email waiting in his inbox. Subject: Congratulations, manuscript. Accepted for publication. His heart paused. It was from the American Journal of Cellular Neuroscience. His major submission, the culmination of 18 months of experiments, datasets, simulations, and sleepless nights. The one he had pushed through, despite microaggressions, despite underfunding, despite subtle disinvites from key panels. It had been accepted. He opened the email. The body was brief, clipped with academic formality. Dear Dr. Hale, we are pleased to inform you that your manuscript Post-Trauma Synaptic Restoration through Gene-Stimulated Receptors has been accepted for publication in our upcoming quarterly issue. The editorial team commends the clarity of your data presentation and the novelty of your findings. There was a line at the end. We recommend refining the video abstract for broader accessibility, as some verbal phrasing may affect clarity across regional audiences. He reread that line. Some verbal phrasing may affect clarity. A subtle note, barely an insult. But he knew what it meant. The same thing it always meant. Your accent, your voice, the way you speak doesn't belong here. They never said it directly. Never had to. They used terms like clarity and standardization. But the message was the same. Conform or be muted. He stared at the screen, the elation that had bloomed now slowly retracting. He clicked the link embedded in the email, View Online Pre-Publication. The journal's site opened, sleek, polished. The front page featured bold headlines about cutting-edge research. He navigated to the upcoming articles section. There it was, his paper. Title intact, figures displayed, abstract clean. But then, his stomach dropped. Where his name should have been, under the title above the author affiliation, there was nothing, just blank space. He blinked, refreshed the page. Still blank. He scrolled down to the author bio section. There, instead of Marcus A. Hale, Assistant Professor Neurocellular Systems, Harvard, the name read, Meme Heller, Department of Neurobiology, Harvard University. What? That wasn't a typo. That wasn't a simple mistake. It was a different person. He clicked on the name. A linked author page opened, empty. No prior publications, no photo, no contact details, just initials and institutional affiliation. Marcus felt the room shift around him. The air went thinner, the floor less steady. He clicked again, refreshed. Same result. His work, his research had been published, under someone else's name. He opened his original submission, checked the metadata. His documents were intact. His cover letter was signed. Everything bore his name. He called the editorial office. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. He sat back in his chair, hands trembling. They hadn't just undermined his speech. They had erased him, erased the voice, the name, the identity behind the discovery, replaced it with an empty monogram. Something safe, palatable, white-sounding, neutral. He opened a new tab, searched the journal staff directory, found the editorial assistant listed under publication management. He called her office line. Editorial. This is Renee. Hi. This is Dr. Marcus Hale. I just received notice of my paper's acceptance, thank you. But there seems to be an issue with the author listing online. A pause. Clicking in the background. Can I get the manuscript ID? He read it out. More clicking. Then silence. We have M.A. Heller listed as lead author. That's not correct, Marcus said, trying to stay composed. That's not me. I submitted that paper under my name. It's my research. Check the submission files. Another pause. Then, one moment, I'll transfer you to Dr. Harrow. Click. A longer pause. Dr. Hale, came a new voice. Older, smoother. Yes, I see the issue. Seems to be a metadata error on our end. Sometimes our autofill system picks up placeholder names from draft stages. It happens occasionally with author templates. Marcus narrowed his eyes. There was no placeholder. I filled that submission myself. Well, Harrow said casually. Regardless, we'll issue a correction before print. Happens more than you'd think. Nothing to worry about. I'd like to know how this happened. Marcus pressed. This isn't a typo. It's an erasure. I assure you, Harrow said, tone tightening. There's no agenda here. It's a clerical slip, and we'll correct it quietly. You're still cited as corresponding author in our back-end system. Marcus inhaled slowly.
Back-end system.
Quiet correction. No public record. No real acknowledgement. He hung up the phone without another word. He sat in his office, shaking. This wasn't a glitch. It was a signal. Even when he succeeded, even when he proved them wrong, he could still be erased. Not by argument. Not by peer review. But by silence. By default. By invisible hands that removed his name as easily as clicking edit. He stared at the screen. At M.A. Heller. Someone had taken credit. Someone inside the system, and Marcus knew, with ice in his blood, that it was intentional. He opened his email and started typing. Subject, urgent, misattribution of published work. But before he could finish, a new email notification popped in. From Sloan, 8. Subject, thought you'd want to see this. It was a single link. He clicked it. It opened to a Reddit thread in an academic forum. The headline read, Harvard scientist's accent goes viral. But is his work actually his? The first comment, he sounds like he copied someone's research and slapped his name on it. The second, no one from that background speaks like a scientist. Sketchy. He closed the browser, his hands curled into fists. But there was no one to fight. Just a system that smiled while it erased you. A second email pings in. This time from an anonymous address with one line. Check the PDF footer metadata. You were never meant to be the author. When the internet decides who belongs, black voices with accents become punchlines. Before they're ever heard, a trending hashtag with his name and imposter begins circulating, and a major university account retweets it. The office light buzzed above Marcus Hale's desk, flickering slightly like it too. Was tired of fighting. He sat frozen, eyes locked on the latest email that had just appeared from an anonymous account. No signature, no greeting, just one sentence. Check the PDF footer metadata. You were never meant to be the author. Marcus's pulse jumped. He downloaded the official journal PDF again. Post-trauma synaptic restoration through gene-stimulated receptors. It had already been viewed, downloaded, and shared across academic mailing lists. The kind of paper that could anchor a tenure file. But now, it was a bomb ticking quietly on his career. He opened the file, scrolled past the abstract, past the dense figures and molecular pathways. Then he toggled the metadata. Author H. Sloan. Last modified by J. Kessler. AJC and editorial staff. Created. 02. Marcus blinked. Sloan. The same man who mocked his accent in front of a live audience. The same man who now, it seemed, had inserted himself invisibly into Marcus's research. He couldn't prove it yet, but everything pointed to a coordinated act. An intellectual hijacking. And now the erosion of his credibility had found a much faster vehicle. The internet. He first noticed it in his inbox, not from colleagues, but from strangers. Subject lines like, nice presentation. Ever learn to speak first? Science or stand-up? Which one were you trying to do? Who let the TA on stage? He opened Twitter. A mistake, maybe. But curiosity is hard to kill when your name is suddenly in everyone's mouth. And there it was.
The video clip.
Someone had filmed the moment from the lecture. The exact second Dr. Sloan interrupted him. The mocking, the laughter, his reaction, the full 10 seconds of academic shame. It was posted under the caption, Harvard's best or just another diversity hire. Tens of thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. Why does he sound like he's ordering sweet tea, not teaching neuroscience? This is what happens when you let affirmative action pick your faculty. I couldn't even understand half his talk. And I'm from the South. He's lucky to be at Harvard. Doesn't belong in the room. It spread fast. Academic Twitter. Conservative blogs. Even a popular TikTok stitched it with a lip-sync parody titled, When Your Professor Sounds Like a Church Deacon. Humor at his expense. Laughter not just at how he spoke, but what he represented. A black man speaking science with authority. It was too much for some people, too unexpected, too unwelcome. He scrolled further. The outrage wasn't just external. Even within so-called progressive academic circles, there were subtle attacks. We should be careful what we call breakthroughs. Hard to assess science when communication skills are that low. Interesting data, but is it reproducible? Each tweet pretended to be about the science, but none of them had read the paper. Not really. They were reacting to a voice, to his presence, to the accent they deemed unworthy of Harvard. Then the hashtags began. Marcus the mistake, Professor a pretender, Harvard hoax. Each one caught fire. But one hit differently. It wasn't the most popular, but it was the most dangerous. Marcus Hale imposter. He clicked it. Thread after thread accusing him of stealing data, misrepresenting authorship, using untraceable assistants to write his material. They didn't question the science. They questioned the right to claim it. The cruelest irony? Just hours earlier, he'd been wondering whether he could prove someone had stolen his work. Now the world was convinced he was the thief. And then came the final twist of the knife. A verified university account, not Harvard's but a Midwestern institution with a major neurobiology program, retweeted the video clip with one comment. This is not what scientific excellence looks like. We must protect the standards of our field. His chest constricted. It was official now. The whisper campaign had gone public. What began as private humiliation had become digital execution. He stared at the tweet, hands shaking. His phone buzzed again. Elaine Kapoor. He picked up. Elaine. Marcus, she said, her voice urgent. I saw the thread. Listen to me carefully. Do not respond. Don't post anything. Not yet. I can't just let them destroy my name. They want you to react. They want to frame this as you being emotional, unstable, angry. If you respond now, you'll give them exactly what they're waiting for. Marcus exhaled slowly. Then what the hell am I supposed to do? We build a paper trail. Everything. The server breach. The metadata. The emails. We document it. If someone's behind this, we're going to trace it. There was a pause on the line. Marcus, what? I need to tell you something, but not over the phone. He sat forward. Then where? She hesitated. Come to my office. Tonight. After hours. And bring a copy of everything you have. He nodded, heart pounding. I'm on my way. But before he could move, another buzz. Another mention. Another notification. He checked Twitter. The Marcus Hale imposter hashtag had just hit the top 10 trending list. And sitting at the very top of the feed. A retweet. From the Harvard Department of Neurobiology's official account. No caption, just the video. Marcus froze. His own institution had now amplified his public humiliation. His own name, next to a word he never imagined would be used against him. Imposter. As Marcus rushes to Elaine's office, he receives an alert. His university email account has just been suspended. In elite academia, not all allies wear smiles, and not all enemies are loud. In the shadows of a department meeting, someone says his research is not original, and it's recorded. The air inside Elaine Kapoor's office was still sterile, and sharper than usual. Stacks of journals lined the far bookshelf, and a flickering fluorescent bulb above gave the room an unnerving glow. Marcus stepped in just before 8:00 p.m., carrying a flash drive, 2 backup hard copies of his research logs, and a mind spinning from hours of digital warfare. Elaine was already waiting, laptop open, a black notepad spread across the desk. Her hair was tied up loosely, and her coat remained draped over the back of her chair, as if she too had no intention of leaving anytime soon. Marcus shut the door behind him. They just suspended my university email, he said without greeting. Elaine blinked. They what? I got the alert on my phone 5 minutes ago. Session terminated. No access. All folders revoked. Elaine's mouth tightened. That's not procedural. No inquiry, no warning.
Nothing.
He placed the flash drive on her desk. This is everything. Screenshots, logs, a screen recording of the server breach, and a copy of the PDF metadata with Sloane's name on it. Elaine nodded and inserted the drive. Her fingers moved quickly, scanning the folder structure. This isn't just an error, she murmured. They're moving faster than I thought. Marcus didn't sit. His adrenaline was too high. He paced slowly beside the bookshelf. The hashtags trending. People are dragging me as a fraud, and Harvard's own account just fanned the flames. Elaine stopped typing. That wasn't an accident. Marcus turned to her. You think it was deliberate? I think you embarrassed the wrong people. And I think someone's using this as an opportunity to remove you, without firing you outright. Marcus exhaled, dragging his hands down his face. So what now? She looked up, serious. Now we find out who's orchestrating this. But first we need to draw lines. Not everyone in this building is who they pretend to be. He paused, studying her. You know something. Elaine hesitated, then reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. She slid it across the table. Open it. Inside were printed screenshots. Slack messages, emails, calendar invites. At first they looked mundane, but then Marcus saw the name, Dr. Richard Vance, a senior figure on the departmental funding board, and one of the professors who had clapped just a little too late after Marcus's lecture. He read the subject line of one message. Proposal shift. Reallocation of biosystemic grant. The body. Given recent public scrutiny on MHale and concerns over authorship integrity, it may be wise to redirect support toward candidates with stronger publication foundations and less reputational baggage. Marcus's fingers curled the edges of the page. He's pulling my funding? Elaine nodded grimly. He's trying to. He's been lobbying quietly for it. Claiming your research lacks institutional credibility. But the paper was accepted, Marcus said. I've got the results, the trials, the citations. That's not what matters to men like Vance. She interrupted. What matters is control. And you broke the chain. You didn't kiss the ring. You didn't walk in with pedigree. Marcus sat now. Slowly. The exhaustion found him. He'd spent years thinking the work alone would protect him. That brilliance would be enough. It never was. Elaine tapped her keyboard again. There's more. She turned the screen toward him. A calendar invite. An internal department meeting. Not publicly listed. This happened 3 days before your paper was accepted. Vance, Sloan, Kessler from the journal, and 3 other faculty from the research review board. Marcus stared. What were they discussing? Elaine leaned back. That's what we're going to find out. Later that week, she helped him install a recording app on his office laptop. A passive tool that could capture ambient conversation, triggered by motion and audio. It wasn't exactly sanctioned, but neither was sabotage. The next department meeting came on Friday. It wasn't held in the large lounge this time. This one was quiet, buried in a smaller conference room, labeled for committee planning. Marcus arrived early, his laptop in his bag. He kept his tone neutral, posture relaxed, pretending not to see the subtle glances exchanged across the table. Dr. Vance was seated near the head, Sloan beside him. The meeting began with talk of faculty travel reimbursements and upcoming conference deadlines. Routine. Mundane. Then Vance brought it up. I think we should consider adjusting grant allocations in light of recent public distractions. No one named him, but the room understood. Sloan leaned forward, chuckling. It's unfortunate when exposure outpaces substance, but maybe that's the world we live in now. Dr. Finch, a junior faculty member, shifted uncomfortably. The science itself hasn't been challenged, though. Vance raised a brow. Has it been independently verified? Silent. Because from what I've heard, Vance continued, some of those models look awfully familiar to past submissions from former students. Marcus's stomach dropped. Sloan added, at best it's redundant. At worst, well, I'll let the data speak. Another voice entered. Someone unfamiliar. A visiting lecturer, perhaps. She said quietly, so you're saying his work isn't original? The pause before Vance responded was brief, but brutal. I'm saying there are patterns. The words hung in the air like poison. But what none of them knew was that the laptop on the floor beside Marcus's seat had captured every second, every whisper, every insinuation. He left the meeting quietly. No confrontation. Not yet. He walked back to his office, shut the door and played back the recording. And when the phrase echoed, his work isn't original, he marked the timestamp, proof, not of bias alone, but of conspiracy. As he rewinds to replay the audio, he hears something he missed the first time, a voice faint, saying let's just push this through before Kapoor finds out. When your findings threaten the foundations of privilege, the pushback comes with force, not feedback. The lights in his lab go out, followed by a single email, you've gone too far. The echo of that sentence, let's just push this through before Kapoor finds out, rattled in Marcus's skull as he sat back in his desk chair. He'd replayed the audio 3 more times since the department meeting, each time more disturbed by what he was hearing, and even more disturbed by what it confirmed. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't academic disagreement. This was a planned, calculated effort to cut him out of his own work and silence the only person inside the system willing to fight with him. Elaine wasn't just in danger of being sidelined. She was being targeted. Marcus saved the audio in 4 places. One version on his laptop, one on a portable drive, one in an encrypted cloud vault, and one printed transcript tucked under the lining of his desk drawer. He didn't trust anything digital anymore, not since his dataset was erased. If they could reach into the lab once, they could do it again. He moved fast that morning. No wasted energy on fear or doubt, just precision. The preprint was ready. He'd made the decision during the sleepless hours between midnight and 4 a.m. He was no longer playing within the confines of their rigged rules. They had already tried to remove his name, bury his research, and publicly brand him as a fraud. But data didn't lie, results didn't vanish, and even if they twisted everything else, they couldn't change what he'd proven in that lab. Marcus logged into BioCiv, the open-source research archive. He wasn't seeking prestige now, he was seeking proof. Visibility. Something time-stamped and immutable. He uploaded the manuscript in full. Post-trauma synaptic restoration, through gene-stimulated receptors. Author Marcus A. Hay. Affiliation Harvard Department of Neurocellular Systems. Note: all datasets and replication scripts are publicly accessible in the linked GitHub repository. Correspondence should be directed to marcus.hale.protonmail.com. It was the same study the journal had accepted under someone else's name, but this version had something none of their doctored copies could mimic. His voice, his hand, his formatting, his data, and a bulletproof audit trail. He clicked submit. A confirmation pinged instantly. Submission received. Your preprint will be live in 20. He leaned back. For the first time in weeks, a real breath filled his chest. He wasn't out of the woods, but for once, he'd spoken without permission. That same afternoon, Marcus met with Elaine Kapoor at a quiet coffee house just outside the main gates. She had chosen the spot, off campus. Low foot traffic. No one from the department ever came this far. He told her everything about the preprint, about the email metadata, and most importantly, about the recorded meeting where someone tried to erase her name from the loop. Elaine didn't blink. Her face remained taut, her fingers tight around her cup. They're testing the limits now, she said after a long pause. They didn't expect you to go public. They still think I won't fight, Marcus muttered. They know you can. They're just hoping you don't have the stamina. He showed her the logs next, the ones she hadn't seen, the altered timestamps, the falsely backdated grant documents, Sloane's early submission that used his methodology. Elaine's brow furrowed. He's trying to claim you copied him. Exactly. Even though your models predate his grant by 6 weeks. Right, she shook her head. I've seen this before. In pieces, in whispers, but never this coordinated. She leaned forward. There's one more thing you need to know. Marcus waited. I found a file in the shared administrative drive. It's labeled under internal review. It's a dossier. On you. His breath caught. What kind of dossier? It includes performance metrics, course evaluations, peer complaints, fabricated ones, notes from anonymous colleagues, questioning your teaching tone and student engagement. It's building a case for non-renewal. They're trying to make it look like I'm unfit. Elaine nodded grimly. Unfit. Incompetent. Unethical. They're laying the foundation. Marcus exhaled through clenched teeth. Then it's time we blow the foundation up. They left the cafe in silence. Elaine went back toward the humanities side of campus. Marcus to the lab. He had one more thing to do. Print the server logs, and cross-reference them with physical lab reports. If they tried to scrub him again, he'd have evidence on paper. The building was quiet when he entered. Most staff had gone home. The janitor gave him a friendly nod, but didn't stop him. He liked Marcus, called him the one who's always working. Marcus walked past the dim corridors, the security cameras flickering red above each doorframe. He reached the lab, swiped his badge. The lock clicked. Inside, the machines were still humming. He sat down at the desk, opened his encrypted archive, and began printing line by line, timestamp by timestamp, the digital proof of who wrote what and when. But as he reached page 17, the lights above flickered once. He paused. Then again, and then, all at once, the room went dark. The machines died. The whir of fans stopped. Total blackout. Marcus's hand hovered above the desk. He waited a moment, letting his eyes adjust. Then the silence broke. Ping. His laptop screen blinked alive, dim in the dark. One new email. No sender. No subject. He clicked. The message was short. You've gone too far. The glow of the laptop lit his face as the weight of the message hit him like a slow punch to the gut. This wasn't a warning. It was a line in the sand. Marcus stood and reached for the lab door. Swiped his card. Red light. He tried again. Red. A beep. Echoed. Access denied. He tried the backup exit. Same result. They had locked him in. Trapped in his own lab. Marcus hears a voice outside the door. Low, deliberate. Saying, erase the drives. All of it. A Harvard ID means nothing at 30,000 feet when your skin and your accent make you a threat. A TSA officer whispers. They called ahead about you. Marcus is stunned. The soft glow of dawn barely broke through the terminal windows, casting long shadows across Gate 27A. At Boston Logan Airport, Marcus sat alone in the waiting area, his carry-on pressed tightly between his knees, his laptop tucked under one arm like it was more valuable than his boarding pass. He hadn't slept since the lab incident. They had locked him in, trapped in silence while his data, his work was nearly erased. He had only escaped when the janitor returned just past 2:00 a.m. for a routine walkthrough and found him pacing in the dark, laptop clutched in one hand, the backup drives hidden inside his coat pockets. He hadn't told Elaine, not yet, there hadn't been time, because the next day, he was scheduled to fly out to Denver to present at the National Neurocellular Research Symposium. His name still barely listed in the program, but present. He'd been given a slot on the final day, the kind often reserved for junior researchers or outsiders. A quiet slot, a slot no one expected to matter. He was determined to make it matter. The speaker list had been finalized 3 months ago. But now, with the digital storm still raging online, with his credentials under scrutiny, and his name now tied to scandal, Marcus knew eyes would be on him, not to learn but to question, not to applaud but to judge. Still he showed up. He always did. He clutched his boarding pass tighter. First class, a rare gift Elaine had pushed for in the department's travel budget before everything unraveled. But now the priority tag on his luggage felt ironic. At the gate, boarding was called by group. Marcus stood, walked toward the counter. The gate attendant looked at his ID, then at him. A pause. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Step aside for a moment, sir. He blinked. Is something wrong? She didn't answer. Instead, she gestured to 2 nearby TSA agents standing at the corner of the terminal. They approached quickly. Marcus Hale, the taller one asked, already knowing the answer.
Yes.
Please come with us. Passengers turned to look. A few whispered. A couple pulled out their phones. Marcus's heartbeat thudded. What is this about? Routine security check, the agent replied. His tone was casual, but his eyes were not. I'm TSA pre-check. I've cleared all protocols. It'll just take a moment, sir. He followed them past the gate, past the seating area, into a narrow corridor that opened into a glass-walled inspection room. Neutral-colored, chillingly quiet. They asked him to remove his shoes, open his bag, unlock his laptop. He complied. They scanned everything twice. What's this hard drive for? One agent asked. Research, Marcus said calmly. I'm presenting at the NNR symposium. The agent eyed him. What kind of research? Neurocellular regeneration. He said it without flinching, but the agent gave a slight smirk, as if the term were too advanced to be believable. And this? He held up Marcus's Harvard faculty badge. Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to justify it. He had earned it. The other agent checked his ID again, whispered something into a radio. More minutes passed. Then came a knock at the glass. A third TSA officer entered. Older, senior, with a trimmed gray beard and quiet authority. He glanced down at the laptop screen, then at Marcus. He nodded to the others. You're clear. Marcus exhaled slightly. Began to gather his things. But as the officer walked him back toward the terminal, he leaned in, voice low, almost too low to hear. They called ahead about you, he said. Marcus stopped. What? The officer didn't repeat it. He just looked at him for a long moment, then walked away. Marcus stood frozen. They called ahead about you. Who? Who had the power to preemptively flag him? What system had been weaponized now beyond campus, beyond email, beyond even the walls of Harvard? He re-entered the terminal. Gate 27A was now nearly empty. Final boarding underway. The gate attendant avoided his eyes as he handed her the stub. First class felt like another world. Soft seats. Champagne being poured. Businessmen with Bluetooth headsets. Marcus sat silently. He clutched the hard drive inside his coat pocket and wondered what would be waiting for him when he landed. As the plane takes off, Marcus opens his email on airplane Wi-Fi and sees a new anonymous message. They're already in Denver. You won't make it to the stage. At the world's biggest science summit, Marcus finally takes center stage, only to face sabotage more precise than any algorithm. A private text thread between elite professors is leaked, and his name is at the center of the slander. The Denver Convention Center loomed like a cathedral of intellect. Glass walls, LED banners, cycling through names of speakers, keynote titles, and institutional logos. Thousands of attendees milled about with lanyards swinging against pressed suits and academic blazers. But no name stood out more than Marcus A. Hale. Not because he was the most anticipated speaker, but because he had become the most controversial. Marcus stepped out of the rideshare with a laptop bag strapped across his chest and a hard drive clenched in his hand. Sleep-deprived and emotionally threadbare, he scanned the bustling check-in desk. Flashes of recognition passed between faces. Some were subtle, eyes narrowing before darting away. Others weren't. One woman nudged her colleague and whispered just loud enough for him to hear. That's him, the one with the accent thing. Marcus kept walking. Inside, the symposium buzzed with academic urgency. Screens flashed neurocellular pathways. Posters lined the walls with dense titles like neurochemical refractory periods in adaptive synapses. This was a temple for minds like his, or at least it was supposed to be. His panel was scheduled for Hall C at 3:40 p.m. It was 2:10 p.m. now. He found the speaker lounge and scanned his badge. A young volunteer looked up, startled slightly by the name. You're Dr. Hale, right? Yes. I was told you'd be arriving earlier. They've already done AV checks without you. Marcus frowned. I confirmed my arrival this morning. She shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, I don't know. Someone said you dropped out. We removed your slides from the backup server. His stomach dropped. Removed them? She nodded, eyes darting nervously. We can still run them if you have a copy. You'll have to reload everything manually. He handed her the drive. Do it. As she plugged it in, her hands trembling. Marcus noticed the side screen, listing session C17, cutting-edge approaches in synaptic reprogramming. His name was now followed by an asterisk. He pointed. What's that symbol? She hesitated. It usually means the presenter's credentials were flagged for verification. Standard protocol. Is that a joke? No, sir. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The absurdity hung there between them, unspoken and heavy. Within 10 minutes, the slides were uploaded. But the room didn't feel ready. Something was wrong. Beneath the technical glitches and quiet whispers, something larger was brewing. At 3:36 p.m. he stood backstage, head lowered, breathing even. He could hear the panel before him wrapping up. Applause, chairs shifting. Then the curtain lifted. Marcus stepped onto the stage. The lights hit his face. Rows of seats filled with scholars, scientists, students, all eyes narrowing the moment he reached the podium. He began, voice firm. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Marcus Hale, and today I'll be presenting my research on post-trauma synaptic regeneration using gene-stimulated receptor architecture. The projector blinked. Then it glitched. Then it went black. The screen behind him froze mid-slide, cutting off the graph in the most critical part of his data visualization. The AV tech in the booth fumbled. Someone whispered behind the curtain. Marcus waited. The audience murmured. Then the tech's voice crackled through the speaker. We're having a software malfunction. Please give us a minute. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 5. Marcus's hands tightened at his sides. He leaned toward the mic. I'll continue while they resolve the visuals. My findings show that. Then the microphone cut out. Dead. He stepped back from the podium, blinking. It wasn't just a glitch. It was surgical. He turned to the AV staff. A woman in headphones shrugged, mouthed, I don't know. The moderator walked onto the stage. I'm terribly sorry, folks. It seems we're experiencing some technical difficulties. We'll need to pause for 10 minutes before resuming. Marcus stepped down slowly. As he walked toward the green room, someone reached for his arm. A journalist, press badge visible. Dr. Hale, do you have a comment on the leaked thread about your ethics report? He turned slowly. She held up her phone. A screenshot was already circulating on social media. A private group chat between 7 verified academic accounts. All faculty. All talking about him. The accent guy. He's a PR nightmare. He may be talented, but that kind of exposure isn't good for any of us. Frankly, these science is recycled. We reviewed similar models from another lab 2 years ago. Someone should pull his presentation before it spreads. And at the center of the chat, his name. Over and over. Marcus stared at the screen. There was no doubt now. This wasn't just ridicule. This was a coordinated, premeditated takedown. As Marcus turns to leave, he sees Dr. Richard Vance standing in the back row, smiling. It's every scholar's dream to be published, but when that dream is stolen, it becomes a nightmare. Elaine Kapoor gasps over the phone. Marcus, that paper, they published it before, under someone else's name. The elevator ride up to his sparse office felt significantly heavier than the climb up the stairs would have. Marcus Hale gripped the metal handrail, his mind replaying the events at the conference, the screen blackout, the mic cut off, the leaked chat thread, and the cold comfort of a seat in the green room. Each moment had chipped away at his confidence, until only raw awareness remained. He stepped into his office, flicked on the light, and watched papers and drives and notes settle into the glow. His computer screen was open before him. The preprint version of his manuscript, Post-Trauma Synaptic Restoration, through gene-stimulated receptors, still live on the public archive. He leaned forward, fingers hovering above the keyboard, and stared at his own name with the author designation in bold. It should have been the culmination of his career. Instead, it represented everything he was now fighting against. A soft chime of his phone pulled him out of the reverie, an incoming call from Elaine Kapoor. He took a breath and tapped the answer button. Marcus, Elaine said, voice terse, almost breathless. You're going to want to sit down. He sank into his swivel chair. What happened? I found something at the editorial office, she said. Your paper. Yes. Your paper was published under a different name last year. Marcus blinked. Published under a different name? How is that possible? Elaine inhaled. It's listed in a smaller journal. Something you never submitted to because it didn't accept your work. But the version is nearly identical. Figures match. Methodology matches. Even the author's notes mention your lab. He leaned back, closed his eyes. Who is the author? There was a pause. Someone named M. A. Heller. At a Midwestern university. Marcus's chest tightened. The letters blurred. A name he didn't know. His paper. His ideas. His voice. We'd been stolen. How long ago was this? He asked. About 14 months, Elaine said. Before your submission to AJCN. Before anything. But the editorial version is nearly the same. The dataset is yours. He brought a hand to his forehead. This isn't coincidence. No. Elaine agreed softly. It's sabotage. And erasure. The weight of it landed on Marcus like a slab of ice. All the mockery, the whisper campaigns, the social media hashtags. It wasn't only about his speech, it was about his claim to intellectual ownership, about who gets to have their name on the paper, who gets to advance, who is allowed to succeed. The timeline made it worse. If someone had published his work under a different name, before he had even submitted, then everything he built was overdue, vulnerable, compromised. He clicked open his email folders. The metadata, the archive. He began comparing submission dates, cover letters, revision notes. Every step he had meticulously tracked. He knew that at some point he had sent the file to his department chair. He sent it to colleagues for feedback. He ran simulations. He had date and time stamps, digital proofs, professor comments. He opened the journal page for the Midwestern publication, Journal of Neurocellular Systems and Regeneration. The article titled Gene-Stimulated Receptor-Mediated Synaptic Plasticity in Trauma Models. Listed M. Heller as lead author, affiliated with Ridgewood University's Department of Neurobiology. The paper was published 12 months ago. It had 5 citations already. It looked legitimate. Marcus's jaw set. Where did you find this? Elaine's voice softened. I pulled databases, cross-referenced the figures with yours. Even the file properties show version 6.4 dated 2 weeks before your version 6. So they backdated it, Marcus said. Exactly. And I found something else. She cleared her throat. The peer review history shows internal reviews were expedited. There's a note, couple minor revisions, track is fast track due to external request. External request? Marcus scoffed. From who? Elaine hesitated. I'm still tracing it, but I found correspondence between the journal and Ridgewood University's general counsel, dated 4 days before submission, with mention of expedited processing for high-impact portfolio. He exhaled a long, slow breath. So they fast-tracked this version under someone else's name, and someone else's voice, Elaine added quietly. Marcus sat in silence for several seconds, each passing tick of the clock heavy with meaning. The fight was no longer academic. The data wasn't the only thing on the table. His identity was. He said, "We need proof." Elaine agreed. "I'll fly out there. Ridgewood has open archives. We might get raw submission files." "Will you go alone?" Marcus asked, tension lining his tone. "Yes. Because you're under scrutiny. If either of us show up together, they'll claim collusion." He nodded into the phone. "I trust you." "Marcus," she said, voice soft now, "you're not just doing this for tenure. You're doing it for yourself." There was a pause. "And for everyone else they think they can steal from." He hung up, closed his laptop. He walked to the window overlooking the campus quad. The late afternoon sun glinted off the ivy-covered walls of the science building. Walls he once thought would protect him. Now they felt like a cage. Marcus opened his drawer and pulled out 2 identical flash drives. One encrypted, one unlocked with a read-only folder labeled Backup External. He inserted the encrypted drive into his laptop and copied the metadata logs, dated submissions, correspondence, all the proof Elaine had gathered so far. He watched the progress bar fill slowly. Then it paused. The computer froze. His screen flickered. And then a system alert popped up. Defense clearance required, access denied. He stared at it for a long moment. His faculty access, his credentials, suspended in an instant. He logged out and logged back in. Same result. Someone had locked him out of his own system. The realization was sharp. This wasn't just a department doing damage. It was the institution leveraging its architecture to silence him. He backed up the flash drives, threw one into his backpack, hid the other in a safe in his office. He called Elaine again. "They're blocking me." "I know," she said. "They'll try to isolate you. Don't let that happen. We move tomorrow. I'll have more clarity." And then came the unexpected twist. About an hour later, Marcus received a package, couriered to his office. No tracking notice. No sender label. He unwrapped it with shaking hands. Inside, a framed photograph of him during his presentation at Harvard, smiling, chalk dust in his hair, mid-slide. On the back, a sticky note. "Your voice matters. Don't let them erase you." He stared at the photo. He recognized the moment only because he had taken a mental snapshot. Someone outside had too. Someone within. He didn't know whether to feel safe or scared. But one thing was clear. He was not alone. Yet the systems trying to remove him were far stronger than he had imagined. As dusk turned to dark, he shut down his laptop, walked out of his office, locked the door, and headed toward the parking garage. His mind was racing. The stolen paper, the institution's complicity, the metadata logs, the threat of isolation, the framed photo. He remembered Elaine's voice again. "You're doing it not just for tenure, for yourself." And tonight, he realized it meant more than he had ever thought. Elaine Kapoor gasps over the phone. "Marcus, that paper, they published it before, under someone else's name. Fame without justice is just another spotlight on your wounds." The TV anchor leans in during rehearsal. "Say something about racism. That's what sells." Marcus Hale sat in the green room of the television studio, the soft hum of cameras and lights all around him. The nameplate outside the door bore his name, and the title Dr. Marcus A. Hale, Harvard University. A symbol of achievement, of recognition, of breakthrough. Yet as he pressed his hands against his knees, feeling the fabric of his suit pull tight, that nameplate felt more like a burden than a badge. The last few weeks had thrust him into a public spotlight he never asked for, one that revealed not the glory of his science but the raw, open wound of institutional bias. The producers of the network talk show had approached him after the conference fiasco. When the video of the lecture interrupt, the leaked chat thread, the disappearing data, had gone viral. They wanted him to tell his story. They wanted the underdog scholar fighting academia. They wanted pageantry, emotion, conflict, a voice, a victim, a hero. The narrative looped back to him, and he sat now under the bright studio lights, makeup artist, adjusting his collar, earbuds in his ears, waiting for cue. He looked around the green room. Other guests. waiting their turn. One was a tech entrepreneur, leather-jacketed, grinning with ease. Another, a reality show participant, laughing with handlers. None of them had spent nights questioning the integrity of their identity. None had to fight not just for their work, but for their right to their work. A stage manager tapped his shoulder and whispered, 5 minutes till rehearsal. Marcus stood, picked up his notes. They were bullet points only. Background, research, incident, moving forward. He decided to glance at them once, then let the story be real. In the corridor, as cameras rolled test footage, he heard the anchor's practiced voice on a monitor. We'll introduce Dr. Marcus Hale next. An extraordinary young professor, making waves at Harvard, but now fighting for the truth about his paper. The voice trailed, a hint of awe, a hint of spectacle. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the set for rehearsal. Lights, cameras, the anchor, Olivia Grant, turned to him with a clipped smile. She held a tablet in her hand. The producer hovered just off camera, phone in hand, counting down. Dr. Hale, Olivia said in the rehearsal. Thank you for joining us. Your research is groundbreaking, but it's your story that's everyone's talking about. Let's start right there. Tell us what happened at Harvard. Marcus nodded. He opened his mouth, but then paused. He knew what story they wanted. The accent, the mockery, the viral video. Those were hooks. But his message wasn't only the spectacle. It was his science and his integrity. He decided to lead with that. I am proud of my work, he began, and I believe that science should be judged on data, method, evidence, not on voice or accent or background. Olivia leaned closer to the camera during rehearsal, almost conspiratorially. That's powerful. But, she added, people also want to hear how it felt. Marcus caught the inflection in her tone. She paused, smiled. How did you feel when your colleagues laughed at your accent? When your work was stolen? When you were asked if you even belonged? Marcus felt the air change. He replied carefully. It hurt, it frustrated me, and I knew it wasn't just about me. It was about change in how academia treats voices like mine. The producer clicked a stop sign. The rehearsal paused. Olivia's smile stayed serene, but her eyes shifted toward the producer. All right, good, he said. Just one tweak. At the top, please say something about racism. Straight from you. That's what sells. Marcus's breath caught. For a moment the room went silent. Everyone looked at him. Sell. The word echoed. He felt his identity, his fight, his research, all of it being packaged. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them.
I'd prefer to speak about the science first, he said.
Olivia paused. Of course, but we'll lead with your personal journey. People tune in for the story behind the science. Marcus nodded, though inside his heart clenched. He realized that the light of the camera didn't cleanse his pain. It magnified it. The anchor's request wasn't about justice. It was about rating. Later he sat alone in the green room, waiting for the actual broadcast to begin. The studio manager knocked on the door and said, "We're live in 3 minutes." He turned to his notes again. He'd added 2 new lines, one about mentorship to minority scholars, one about transparent research practices. He didn't want this to be just about him. He wanted this to be about change. He asked himself, could he use this platform to shift the narrative, or was he going to let them use him? During the live filming, as the red light above the camera turned on, Marcus delivered his opening. Science has always advanced when we challenge assumptions. My work seeks to test those assumptions, not about cells, but about people, about opportunity. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Olivia nodded, then asked, You've been called an imposter. A media headline called you professor or pretender. What do you say to that? The audience leaned forward. Marcus took a breath. I understand why people might think that. Because what they saw was a moment, a clipped video, not the full story. But the data is real. My team is real. My voice, accent and all is real. And I refuse to be seen as anything less because of that. The audience applauded politely, but it felt hollow. In the green room later, before he left the studio, the producer pulled him aside. Good job, she said quietly. You connected. We'll cut the segment to sit at prime time. Marcus nodded. Yes, he said. But I need to make sure you include the link to the dataset. She hesitated. We'll include the story link. That's not enough, he said. People need access, not just emotion. She smiled thinly. I'll talk to the editor. He walked out under the bright red on-air sign, and felt the corridor's echo follow him. Cameras off, mic pack removed, badge taken. Outside, his phone buzzed. A message from Elaine. Watch the replay. Something's wrong with the edit. Back home later, he opened the segment online. In the first minute, the headline banner read, Harvard scientist speaks on accent controversy. In the actual clip, nearly half the time was devoted to the details of the mockery, the viral meme, the leaked chat. His research got a passing mention. The hyperlink to his dataset was missing. The conversation had shifted from truth and transparency to the soundbite and sensation. He exhaled slowly, the screen's glow reflecting off his face. Fame without justice. The wound exposed for viewers. The fight illustrated, but maybe not addressed. And in that moment, Marcus realized that the platform could amplify his voice, or flatten it. The TV anchor leans in during rehearsal. Say something about racism. That's what sells. When silence is no longer an option, truth cukes a weapon, and Marcus prepares to use it. The night before the panel, he receives a package with no return address. Inside, torn pages from his own lab notebook. The evening air in Boston held the brittle chill of early November, and Marcus Hale felt every bit of it as he exited the building. Briefcase in hand and fatigue tracing the lines beneath his eyes. The last weeks had been a war without uniform. Viral shaming, data theft, professional sabotage, televised distortion. He walked through the campus quad, baskets of leaves rustling at his feet, as if the world around him tried to shrug off what had been ignored for generations. He stopped at the bench beneath the maple tree, its leaves turning bronze and gold, and sat for a moment, letting the silence rest on him. That silence, he realized, would never be an option again. Across his mind played the audio clip from the meeting, where a senior faculty member casually declared, "His work isn't original." And the text thread where the professors labeled him an accent guy. And the journal metadata, where his name was replaced by another. He had tried to survive with quiet dignity, but dignity alone had become a risk. Tonight, he made a decision. He opened his laptop and logged into the secure backup drive hidden in his coat pocket. He uploaded 3 folders, the audio recording of the meeting, the metadata evidence from the journal, and the backup dataset for his paper published under his name. He labeled the folder Disclosure to M. Hale, and set permissions so it would be publicly accessible if anything happened to him. He hit share and sent the link to Elaine Kapoor with the subject line, "Last safe copy." Immediately his phone buzzed. "Elaine. Received. Good move. Timing is everything. Tomorrow's panel will change the direction of this." Marcus exhaled. The panel. The next day, he and Elaine were scheduled as speakers at a public forum hosted by the university's Research Oversight Committee. A panel designed for high-profile cases of academic integrity. Marcus was to present the proof of his research, the sabotage, the systemic erasure. Elaine would moderate. The invitation had come after the preprint went public. The pressure swelled and the university could no longer ignore. Now they were turning the tables. Inside his office, Marcus laid out his materials, printouts of the recording with timestamp, journal issue with wrong author name, the internal Slack messages listing his name among threats, a binder of his lab notebooks from years past, all meticulously scanned and annotated. He opened the drawer and pulled out a small plaque he had received years ago. Junior Faculty Research Award, Marcus A. Hale, 2019. Its shine looked dulled now, but the memory of why he had earned it still burned. He sat at his desk and dialed Elaine. "Let's go over the opening statement," he said. She answered calmly. "All set. I'll start with the context. What you faced. Then you'll walk through the evidence. Finish with the demand. Investigation and restoration." He nodded, though she could not see him. "I want them to know I'm not just a victim. I'm still a scientist."
"And you're still speaking," she replied.
The hours passed. Midnight approached. He shut down his laptop, stepped into the shower, and thought through the next day. His mind drifted to the thousands of students his research might help. The veterans, the stroke survivors. He remembered a phone call from an ex-soldier last week. "Dr.
Hale, your work gives me hope."
That hope now felt halfway to vengeance. Not for personal glory, but for justice. In the darkness of his apartment, his phone buzzed again. A delivery update. Package delivered. No return address. He glanced at the notification and ignored it. A mistake, perhaps? A prank. He went to bed, but sleep did not come. He drifted into uneasy half-dreams, his slides disappearing, the screen freezing, his name erased again. Only this time he could see the eraser tool hovering over the text, Marcus A. Hale. Morning came early. He didn't wake to sunlight but to his own alarm. 4:45 a.m. He dressed in his navy blazer and white shirt, power tie chosen for no reason other than to reclaim the image that had been used against him. In the mirror he saw himself, tired, determined, wind-burned by the fights he'd fought. He touched his tie knot, and then he noticed something. The plaque's engraving had a small dent. He had never noticed it before. A silent mark, maybe from years of moving, maybe purposeful. He replaced it in his drawer and left for campus. The panel took place in the grand auditorium of the university's Law and Policy building. The walls rose high, seats tiered, lights bright. The stage had the university seal in gold behind the podium. Marcus's name appeared on the program as Dr. Marcus A. Hale, presenter. No asterisk, no qualifier. The seating chart placed him next to Elaine, while the oversight committee sat before them, a mix of senior faculty, legal counsel, and a live streaming production crew. When the moderator welcomed them, he said, "Today we examine issues of authorship, academic integrity, and institutional responsibility." His voice echoed. The audience leaned forward. Marcus felt the weight of expectation, and the weight of consequence. Elaine began with the summary of the patterns: mockery for accent, viral video, journal misattribution, data breach, internal harassment. Marcus sat beside her, listening. Her voice remained firm, but gentle. Then Marcus rose. He opened with, "I stand here not simply as someone wronged, but as someone who will show you why silence enabled it." He paused, looked across the room, "And why your systems helped it happen." He displayed the audio recording. The room gasped quietly. He scrolled through the metadata, where his name had been replaced. The digital timestamp of comm submissions, the screenshot of the private chat. He didn't raise his voice. He let the evidence speak. Physics, chemistry, science. They don't care about tone or dialect. They care about truth. A senior professor on the committee coughed. One of them, a man Marcus once respected, stood and asked, "Dr. Hale, this is compelling. But do you have proof beyond your assertions that this was targeted because of your background?" Marcus turned to him. "Yes." He tapped to the next slide. The shared Slack messages. The backdated equations. The internal memo to reallocate grants. Because of reputational baggage. The committee members shifted. Marcus saw Dr. Vance in the back row, his expression unreadable. Elaine picked up then. "The next step we demand is an independent audit of the department's funding and authorship systems, and the immediate reinstatement of Dr. Hale's authorship record." There were murmurs. The senior professor responded, "Understand this may require institutional introspection that many are unprepared for." Marcus exhaled. "Yes, that's why we need it." For 40 minutes they went through every piece of evidence. Marcus's voice grew steadier. Each revelation cut further. Each camera click recorded more than lectures. It recorded the moment when a scholar reclaimed his voice. After the panel ended, the live audience applauded. But it wasn't the end. The live stream comments surged. The hashtag #RestoreMarcusHale trended. For once the narrative shifted. Marcus stepped off stage. Elaine met him with a small smile. But even as relief settled, a caution remained. They were winning the public moment, but the institutional fight was just starting. Later that evening, back at his apartment, Marcus opened his laptop. The folder disclosure email was showing thousands of downloads, emails from journalists, from academic alliances, from minority scholar networks. The tide had turned. He leaned back, glanced toward the window. The city lights through the curtains flickered like weak stars. He should have felt victory. He did, but it felt incomplete, because the systems that hurt him were still in place, and because the unknown hands who had initiated the sabotage were still unmasked. He closed his laptop and stood in the kitchen to pour a glass of water. That's when the package on the floor caught his eye, the one delivered earlier. He had meant to ignore it. Now he opened it. No sender, no label. Inside, a small stack of torn pages, yellowed notebook sheets from his own lab notebooks, scribbled equations, margin notes, his handwriting. The pages were torn, ragged edge, deliberate. Some parts were missing, others highlighted in red ink. Prepare to resign. We must protect our field. Next move, erasure. Marcus's heart hammered. Someone had snuck into his office, took pages from his physical notes, torn them, sent them. He stacked them and read the hidden messages. It wasn't just about stealing work anymore. It was about control, threat, and the next move would come quickly. The night before the panel, he receives a package with no return address. Inside, torn pages from his own lab notebook. The truth, once buried, is now on trial, and Marcus must defend it alone. The opposing testimony isn't just a lie, it's signed by someone Marcus once trusted. The hearing room was cold, formal, and far more intimidating than any lecture hall Marcus Hale had ever faced. Rows of observers filled the polished wood benches, faculty members, department heads, legal counsel, media correspondents. The university seal loomed behind the dais, where the oversight committee sat, judges of an academic empire built on tradition and faith. Marcus entered alone, carrying a slim briefcase that contained every piece of evidence he and Elaine Kapoor had collected. Server logs, journal metadata, timelines, audio recordings. They were here, tonight, to expose what had been ignored for months. As he approached the podium, his heart pounded with the weight of the moment. Not just for him personally, but for every scholar who ever had their voice silenced. He glanced at Elaine, seated to the far side, her gaze steady but worried. She gave him a small nod. He took a breath. The moderator opened the hearing. We are convened to examine allegations of improper authorship, misuse of institutional privilege, and systemic bias within the Department of Neurocellular Systems at Harvard University. Gasps rippled through the audience. The faculty opposite him shifted in their seats. Marcus sensed they were bracing themselves. He stood. "Thank you," he said calmly. "My name is Dr. Marcus A. Hale. What I will present tonight is not just about me. It's about how a system that claims meritocracy can hide prejudice behind protocol." He clicked to his opening slide, a timeline of his research submission, and the journal publication under another name. The screen illuminated faces in the gallery. He described, with clear, unembellished clarity, the lecture hall incident in which his accent was mocked. He described the viral clip, the leaked texts, the journal misattribution, the data breach, and the package of torn notebook pages. With each revelation, he watched their expressions. Some turned pale, others closed their eyes briefly. A few mouthed apology. When he showed the recording of the department meeting, the room went still. The audio played, a senior faculty voice declaring his work not original. The committee member shifted in his chair. The older professors exchanged glances. The transcript of the private chat flooded the screen. The accent guy, PR nightmare. His work is recycled. Pull his slide. The audience exhaled. The moderator called for the opposing statement. A door opened on the side and Dr. Richard Vance approached the microphone. The same man Marcus had once respected. The one whose smile at the conference had felt self-satisfied. Now his face was polite but firm.
Dr. Hale, Vance began. We appreciate your presentation and the emotional toll this has taken. However, the committee must consider the full record. The paper in question, submitted under M.A. Heller at Ridgewood University, predates your submission. Our internal review finds sufficient grounds to question whether your work is entirely new.
A murmur spread. Marcus's chest tightened. The committee chair asked Marcus if he had reviewed the Ridgewood paper. He nodded. "Yes, I have," he said. "I will show you what they refused to release. The raw submission files from Ridgewood, which are backdated and contain errors identical to files I created later. You will see the metadata chose copying from my lab notes." Vance pressed on. "Dr. Hale, multiple independent reviewers have raised concerns, not about your accent or background, but about reproducibility. We received letters from several labs saying they could not replicate your model. Until further verification, the committee cannot restore authorship or endorse tenure." The blow hit like falling glass. Marcus felt each word fracture something inside him. Not because the critique was fair, but because the source of the critique hid behind his past trust. He looked at Vance. "Can you name the labs?" Vance smiled. "Not publicly. Confidential peer review reports." Marcus exhaled and turned to his briefcase. He clicked a folder open on the screen. A video of a technician in his lab, manipulating an external drive. Timestamp from the night he was locked in his lab. He played one segment. Shadowed figure. Transferring gen sub network. A folder. Faces obscured. He paused on the drive's serial number. This transfer happened when my keycard access still showed active. Someone piggybacked in. Maybe logs confirm it. This is not about reproducibility. This is about theft. A committee member, Dr. Francesca Mills, cleared her throat. "Even so, Dr. Hale, We must examine whether your own oversight assisted in fearing replication. The human language critique, the accent, is separate from scholarship. Marcus kept his composure. That human language critique is a symptom, not a cause. When you tell a black man his voice is the problem, you claim his work is incidental. You silence him until he fails. An uncomfortable hush filled the room. Elaine stood now. She stepped forward and addressed the committee. The final piece you requested, Dr. Hale, is here. She handed the chair a thumb drive. Inside are 5 years of lab notebooks. Scanned. Every replication attempt. Every failure. Every revision stamp. You can trace them backward. You can check the hard copies in his safe. None of it contains metadata from before October 2023, except the archived backdated Ridgewood submission. The chair examined the drive. Others leaned in. Vance looked away. The chair cleared his throat. We will recess for 15 minutes to review. A buzz of cameras, murmurs, whispered speculation. Marcus stepped aside, his body rigid. Elaine joined him. I did it, he said quietly. We did it. She nodded but didn't smile.
Yes?
But this fight isn't over. He had thought standing here meant the hardest part was behind him. But facing your oppressor in the light was only half the story. They returned after the recess. The committee chair resumed. We have reviewed the materials. We must consider due process. There will be a further investigation, internally and externally. We will decide on first whether to correct the author record for Dr. Hale's publication and second, whether to reinstate the funding and grant allocations, withheld. Mutters erupted. Vance stood, paper in hand. And we must do this with transparency. However, he paused. Several investigators have come forward with additional evidence that Dr. Hale's lab allowed unmonitored access to sensitive systems. Until their findings are consolidated, further grant funding will remain frozen.
The room stiffened.
Marcus's heart sank. My lab was breached. I reported it. I was silenced for reporting it. Vance's expression was unreadable. Just then a university IT officer entered the hall, motioning to the chair. Excuse me, gentlemen. There is a document submission for the committee. The chair nodded. An envelope, sealed typed address, no sender indicated, was handed to him. He opened it, pulled out a sheet of paper. He cleared his throat. An anonymous statement has been submitted, signed by a former research assistant of Dr. Hale's, alleging misconduct. The name is redacted for confidentiality, but has been verified. Marcus froze. On review, the chair continued. The assistant claims Dr. Hale directed replication of a model that was previously produced by another lab, and that he withheld raw code files until forced to release them. The committee must include this testimony in their inquiry. Marcus's pulse thundered. He looked at Elaine. She stared back. Then Marcus remembered the moment. The friendly postdoc slides in the lab, his name scribbled in margin. He remembered handing him coffee. He looked up at the assistant's name, blurred on the document, but he recognized the signature. Someone he once trusted. The opposing testimony isn't just a lie. It's signed by someone Marcus once trusted. Even in victory, racism knows how to twist the knife, especially when power is forced to apologize. The crowd cheers the correction notice, but his research funding is terminated, and no one will explain why. The auditorium was charged with quiet triumph. The afternoon the official correction notice was posted. Marcus Hale sat at the front of the room, flanked by Elaine Kapoor and 2 legal representatives from the Oversight Committee. The large projection behind them flickered and displayed the statement in bold letters. The authorship of the paper Post-Trauma Synaptic Restoration through Gene-Stimulated Receptors is hereby corrected to list Dr. Marcus A. Hale as sole author. Previous misattribution was due to administrative error and internal misuse of metadata. The audience erupted into spontaneous applause. Faculty stood and applauded. Some long and slow. Students cheered. A few wiped tears. A handful embraced. For Marcus, the moment felt surreal. After months of being mocked, erased, and judged, the official record now named him. But the applause changed nothing about the emptiness in his chest. He acknowledged the crowd with a subtle nod. Voice quiet but steady. Thank you, he said. This correction is meaningful, not for me alone, but for all scholars whose voices are dismissed. Elaine placed a hand on his shoulder. He felt the weight of her support, the risk she had taken, and the battle still before them. After the event, in the corridor outside the auditorium, dozens of well-wishers stopped him. One student asked for a photo. A dean offered congratulations. Another colleague said quietly, "Your name is back where it belongs." Marcus smiled politely, shook hands, made small talk. Inside he held an archive of sorrow and anger and displacement. He had wanted the recognition, and yet now that it arrived, it felt like part of a ledger, not freedom. Later in a reserved meeting room, the oversight committee convened privately to finalize the remaining steps. Marcus and Elaine sat at opposite sides of the long mahogany table. The chair, Dr. Mills, opened with a cordial tone. "We have achieved a correction. Next steps include restoration of authorship records, public disclosure of institutional failings, and an audit of funding decisions related to Dr. Hale's career." Marcus nodded. "That's my expectation. We will proceed," the chair asserted. However, she paused, checked her notes. "There are budgetary constraints. We cannot guarantee immediate restoration of your full funding. Review will follow." Marcus's stomach dropped. The room's energy shifted. He realized the applause might have been premature. "Dr. Hale," another committee member said, "we acknowledge the harm done to you, but the institution also must protect its reputation. Some past decisions, author credit, grant allocation, cannot be undone quickly." When the meeting ended, Marcus walked outside into the dusk air, and the campus looked different. The ivy-covered walls seemed taller, more imposing. The victory, the correction shone like a promise, yet the shadows behind it were long. He turned to Elaine. "This should feel like justice." She took a breath. "It should, but it's only part of it." He nodded, but asked the question that had settled in his gut. "What didn't you tell me?" Elaine looked at him slowly. "The correction notice went out publicly." "Yes, but I found a side note in the internal files. It states that your next grant application will be flagged as high risk. No explanation, just notation." Marcus's heart sank. "Flagged. Which means," she said quietly, "any disbursements may be withheld for 6 to 12 months. It buys time. It buys the institution cover." He stared at her. "So they give me my name back, but they take away the money." "Yes," she confirmed. "And we don't have a reason yet. That means they don't need one." Publicly. Over the next few days, the correction made news. Academic websites, science blogs, Twitter threads. Marcus found himself again at the center of attention, but for once he made a conscious decision. When someone asked about the incident, he emphasized his research, not his accent. He spoke of synaptic recovery, gene-stimulated receptors, the patient's waiting. Yet the applause continued, and somewhere beneath it all, the funding freeze loomed like a tombstone. Then came the email all researchers fear. Grant application NM149-3 has been terminated effective immediately. You may not apply for related research funds through this institution until further notice. Please contact the Office of Sponsored Programs for details. Marcus stared at the screen. The chair of the Oversight Committee had said review, not termination. This was destruction. He called Elaine. "It's done. I'm terminated." She inhaled. "I'm sorry." He closed his eyes. The realization hit. They had won authorship. They had won public acknowledgement. But with that came the price. The institution had framed the narrative so he could be seen, but stripped of power. That night he sat at his desk and looked through his archived emails. Funding approvals, travel vouchers, student stipends. The budget line for his lab had already been cut months earlier. Hidden in small reductions, fewer assistants, older equipment, delayed travel approvals. Each cut alone seemed innocuous. Together they were strangulation. He leaned back and closed his eyes. "If you can't fire me for the prejudice, you starve me out." The next morning he had to teach his seminar. As he entered the classroom, students greeted him. Some looked awed, others curious. He walked to the front table, set down his materials. A student raised his hand. "Dr. Hale," she said, "congratulations on your paper correction." "Thank you," he replied. "But now the work begins." He launched into the lecture. Midway he noticed a student filming him on their phone. He paused and said, "Please stop filming. The content will be posted on the class portal after approval." The student hesitated. "Stop." He felt the weight of the moment. Footage could be twisted. Words could be cropped. Recognition could flip to doubt. Later in his office he saw notifications. Dozens of micro-posts, blog comments, social media responses. The correction hailed as vindication. But fewer notes about the funding termination. Fewer headlines. He realized then that vindication without resource is a hollow victory. Weeks later, he received a formal letter from the university's Faculty Affairs Office. It read, "We have concluded our initial review and resolved to correct authorship. Given the complexity of the situation, we regret we are unable to offer a public apology or reinstatement of budget until the final administrative audit is completed." The phrase "unable to offer" stuck in his throat. Apology, but no admission. Reinstatement, but only if they approved. He felt like a debt now, not a scholar. He shared this with Elaine in a late-night call. "They're talking the talk," he said, "but they're still delaying the walk." Elaine's voice was firm. "We need to prepare for the next phase. Publicizing the funding freeze. Mobilizing allies. Media coverage." He nodded. The fight had shifted again from recognition to resource. From being seen to being sustained. In the darkest moment of his mind, Marcus allowed himself a rare flash of anger. Not loud, not destructive. Quiet. Focused. He remembered the photo delivered in the torn notebook package. The inscription, "Your voice matters. Don't let them erase you." He realized. They had tried, but he hadn't let them. Over the next days, the campus buzzed with the correction. Forums held discussions on bias and access. But in his own lab, the machines sat idle. The budget line was gone. The graduate students had been reassigned. The staff had moved. Still, Marcus walked back to the lab each morning. He sat at the workstation, opened his laptop, and stared at the screen. He typed a new email to all department heads and research sponsors. Subject, "Continuation of research project under independent funding." In the body, he proposed a coalition, academics, veterans representatives, minority scholar networks, to crowdfund and circumvent institutional blockade. He attached the public preprint link. He referenced the correction notice and the audit request. He hit send. As the message left his outbox, his phone rang. It was the university's legal counsel. He picked up. "Dr. Hale," came the voice, polite but firm. "We received your email. Thank you. However, until you comply with the investigation process and withdraw your external outreach, we must enforce the terms of your funding agreement." Marcus closed his eyes. The irony burned. They had corrected his authorship, publicly, only to cut him off privately. He opened his laptop. The screen glowed. The machines in his lab silent. The correction had been issued, but his work had been halted. And the victory, the name restored, could be taken any time the purse strings were pulled. The crowd cheers the correction notice. But his research funding is terminated, and no one will explain why. In the end, Marcus reclaims what they tried to erase. His voice, his name, his work. As the screen fades, a final email pings his inbox. "You're being sued for defamation." The morning light came softly through the tall windows of Marcus Hale's office, filtering over folders and flash drives and memory-laden notebooks. He sat at his desk, the plaque that read Junior Faculty Research Award. Marcus Hale, 2019, now polished, the dent still visible but less troubling than before. The name on the plaque no longer felt like a pretense. He had earned it. The author correction, the public record restored. It was. He inhaled slowly and exhaled, feeling a weight lift from his chest even as another settled in its place. Responsibility. He stood and walked to the lab corridor. Empty machines hummed softly, waiting for something to happen. Graduate students, some reassigned, some gone, had left behind their personal mugs, their schedules, and a faint trace of what the place used to be. Marcus touched the doorframe of his lab and paused. Change had come slowly and harshly. The funding freeze had silenced much of the work. But something else had stirred. Outside the institution, veteran groups, health tech firms, minority scholar networks had begun contacting him, offering collaborative pipelines, crowdfunding, independent checks. The fight had turned into motion. He returned to his desk and opened his inbox. The correction notice sat at the top of his important folder. A forwarded PDF from the Oversight Committee. Beneath that, new emails. One from an independent research group offering shared resources. Another from a minority scholar initiative wanting to publish a collection on voices in science. And one from a Veterans Neurorehabilitation Foundation, referencing his study's implications. His work had meaning beyond tenure, beyond accreditation. It had humanity. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. He drafted a response. "Thank you. I accept the invitation. Let's speak on how to implement the model for real-world trauma." He paused before hitting send, reflecting on the journey. Once his accent had been his liability. The moment his voice faltered in that lecture hall, mocked, ridiculed, That had been the beginning, not of the downfall, but of the uncovering. That the system didn't just fail his voice, it feared it. And now he was reclaiming the narrative. He walked to Elaine Kapoor's office to update her. She greeted him with her usual composure, but her eyes glowed with relief. They shared a quiet handshake, two researchers who had become warriors. He told her about the new collaborations, the email responses, the networks forming outside the institution. Good, she said quietly. This is beyond just you. It's the movement. He nodded. I want my voice, my story, our story to open doors, not just for me. Lane smiled. Legacy beyond the accent. They returned to his office and spent the afternoon mapping out a new plan. He would host online open-access lectures about his methodology. He would create a public data repository. He would mentor young scholars, especially those who heard the hint of mockery in the lecture hall, who silenced themselves before they spoke. His experience would become their guide. He wrote promotional copy, "Your voice matters in science," accent and all. The phrase felt heavy and liberating. Late in the evening, he sat alone, reviewing the day's messages. The campus quieted outside. In the solitude he felt the transformation, not just of his career, but of his posture in life. He remembered the red folder labeled Tenure Committee, the hashtag Nonkus Hail Imposter, the TV studio's demand, say something about racism. That's what sells. He remembered the torn pages in the package. He remembered the flight detention and the viral clip. Now he was rewriting the ending. He drafted a blog post, title, From Accent to Authority. Body, when they mocked my accent, they didn't know I was listening. When they erased my name, they didn't know I could reclaim it. When they stalled my funding, they didn't know I would build outside their walls. He paused and closed the laptop, staring at the screen. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled. Countless lives, countless voices. He hoped his new platform would reach beyond the echo chamber of prestige and bias. But as the clock ticked past midnight, another ping disrupted the quiet. A new message appeared in his inbox. The sender was unlisted. The subject line, legal notice, Dr. Marcus A. Hale. Marcus hesitated, thumb hovering over the message. He steeled himself and opened it. The body was brief. This is to inform you that a formal legal claim has been filed against you for defamation, in relation to statements made during the public panel on November 18, 2025. You are required to respond within 30 days. Legal counsel will follow. His mind raced. Defamation? They were suing him? He remembered his words at the panel. The audio clip. The documents, the claims of erasure and bias. He had spoken truth. He had presented evidence. But now, someone was reversing the suit. They claimed his statements were defamatory. They claimed he was the aggressor. He closed his eyes. A wave of anger and exhaustion washed over him. Not because of the lawsuit. Because the fight kept shifting. Because for all the evidence, all the correction notices, all the alliances, he was still in danger, not just of silent erasure, but of being framed. He sent a quick text to Elaine. Legal notice received. They're suing. Within minutes her reply came. I see it. Let's talk tomorrow morning. Don't respond until we review. He closed the computer and leaned back in his chair. He realized legacy wasn't an endpoint. It wasn't applause or correction or platform. It was endurance. It was having your name in lights without apology, and then being ready when those lights flickered again. He stood and walked to the window, the cityscape before him. The lights seemed steady, yet he knew how darkness crept. He knew how once hidden systems could reappear with different weapons. In that moment he vowed, no matter the lawsuit, no matter the funding freeze, no matter the platform they offered to relabel his work or shift his voice, he would not go silent again. His name, Marcus A. Hale, would remain attached to his research, his legacy. Not because someone gave it back, but because he reclaimed it. As the screen fades, a final email pings his inbox. You're being sued for defamation. If you've ever been overlooked, unheard, or told your truth didn't matter, Marcus's story was written for you. Because this isn't just about science. It's about every voice they tried to silence. Every dream they buried beneath bias. If his fight felt like yours,